very big that you're sometimes scared of your dreams, but start very small so that you can focus on it. Start very small. You can master it very easily. Start very small so that it is easy for you to build it step by step. So once you are able to master, once you are able to focus on a thing, it will become very easy for you to scale it up. Kabir here, a dreamer. So here we are on a journey to reach the impact to 100 million businesses around the world. As a part of it, we are doing a 100 days OD event where you have the very basics of business being discussed with experts. Today I have someone who was like a superhero in my dreams when I joined Toastmasters. And to take forward the session, I have my communication coach, Jyotika Shetty.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Kabir.
yeah. Okay, to you, Jyotika.
You can continue, Kabir. Were you supposed to say something? You please continue.
It was the stage I was going to tell. The stage is yours,
All
Jyotika.
right, okay. Thank you. A very good evening. A warm welcome to our audience. 20 of them have already joined us and more to come in. Thank you for joining us this evening for a special session of communications. We have with us today, like Kabir said, a celebrity for all of us in the world of public speaking. But before I introduce that particular person, I'd like to first just tell you what exactly the ground rules are for this particular house that we are in. First of all, please feel free to connect with each other because it's all about community building. So please feel free to reach out. If you want to join the panel to speak, we will open the floor 30 minutes after the session. You may please feel free to raise your hand. If you want to join us now, please do so. You can raise your hand, we will put you in the panel, and then we can open the floor for the questions. So we're going to begin our evening this today. So first of all, hope your day has gone very good and you're in great spirit, and we look forward together to have this session in a fantastic way. So today's session is about presentation perfection for entrepreneurs, where we intend to explore some strategies for impactful delivery that can set you apart the next time you plan to deliver your presentation. In today's dynamic world, delivering compelling presentation is nothing short of a superpower. As an entrepreneur, your ideas, visions, and pitches hold the key to securing investors, inspiring your team, and captivating potential customers. There's a lot at stake when you pitch your startup to investors, sharing your vision with your team, or networking at industry events. Our discussion today aims to equip you with the tools and insights you need to deliver presentations in your organization. For the next 1 hour, we plan to deep dive into various aspects of effective presentation, and you will learn, and we actually want you to take some useful strategies that you can implement in the future. In the panel today, we have a speaker par excellence, Lance Miller, who is someone I look up to in the world of public speaking. First of all, a warm welcome, Lance. A very good evening or good morning to you from the part of the world that you are joining us.
Thank you, Jakita.
Right. Lance Miller is an award-winning speaker and trainer. He has delivered 5,000 speeches in over 60 countries, and he's a Toastmasters 2005 World Champion of Public Speaking. He has a long list of adventure-based accomplishments, from earning his pilot's license at 19 years old, sailing across the North Atlantic, and even scuba diving under the ice of frozen lakes. Most importantly for us today, he's a serial entrepreneur, having been a key executive in over 20 new product launch, startups, and corporate turnarounds. He is also quick to state that not all of them were successful. Today, Lance has his own startup company. He is the CEO of TerraX, providing sustainable technologies to the agriculture and commercial markets. He is joined today to share how communication skills are critical to personal and business success. Please join me in welcoming with a heart, a clap, or a thumbs up, welcoming Lance Miller. A warm welcome again, Lance.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you today.
Thank you for joining and also gracing our occasion because you've been one person that I've been looking up to in the world of public speaking. 10 years in Toastmasters, and Lance is someone who's omnipresent to all who want to become world champion of public speaking. But today we're going to blend entrepreneurship with public speaking and tell our audience how can they get there, if not public speaking, but how they can actually present a stellar performance as entrepreneurs. So shall we start, Lance?
Let's get going.
All right. We'll also be joined by Dr. Sujit, who's another panelist. He will be joining us in a short while. Until then, I have a lot of questions for Lance, and I'm sure all of us are going to enjoy these questions. So, Lance, let's start with a dose of inspiration. We know you as Toastmasters World Champion of Public Speaking, but you've been an entrepreneur much before that. Can you share your personal experience of how becoming a world-class speaker helped you in your journey as an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. The whole concept when I started speaking, and I always say the hardest thing to do when you stand in front of an audience is to be yourself and to just talk to the audience. And we watch this all the time where somebody stands up in front of the audience and they become somebody else. You know, they feel that the person you meet in the hall is not the person you see on the stage. And it was my goal to just really be the same person. And I think there's some specific reasons that happens, largely because in life we typically learn by mimicry, by seeing things in the world. You know, we didn't really have someone sit down and teach us our language. We mimicked the sounds we heard from our parents, and we learned how that happened. And then we started mimicking the activities we saw from our parents, their reactions. And much of our life, the people that spoke to us were commanding and orderly. And when they stood in front of a group, they were the boss, they were the authority. And so we feel when we stand in front of a group, we have to become the authority because that's what we've seen our whole life. The big thing that really helped me in that journey, Tatico, was I really got to discover who I was. And I got to be comfortable in my own skin standing in front of a group of people. And when I realized what my values were, and I realized that they were my thoughts, my values, my ideas were good and they were valuable, because a lot of our life, when we go communicate things, we have people tell us that that's wrong or it's stupid, or we say something, people laugh at us, and we can question our own thoughts, intentions, our own the values we have. And so through all these years of speaking and the journey to the World Championship, which I did compete in for 13 years, it was not something I came out and won the first year, was really a journey of self-discovery. So I was comfortable in my own skin, and I could just be comfortable standing in front of somebody and talking to them. And that's been invaluable in the entrepreneurial space, because what are we doing as an entrepreneur? We're bringing out new ideas into the world. And a lot of times we get laughed at, and people tell us they're stupid. The ideas are stupid. They won't work. They're not needed. And those words and those reactions from others can have effects on our own confidence, our well-being as an individual, feeling that maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe I will fail. And as soon as those ideas start to come in our head, our chance for success diminishes greatly, because we're now thinking maybe this isn't going to work. And I'll tell you, in all the businesses I brought out or turned around, you had to believe it was going to work, or what, because it had to start with you. You had to know it was going to work. So that may not be the answer you expected, but the whole thing of being able to stand in front of a group and clearly communicate, you really discover yourself in the process of that, and you become a more complete, whole, I say high integrity type individual, that you're not questioning your own thoughts and intentions, and that gives you more power as an individual.
Right. The last bit of what you mentioned, that doubting our own self. I think most of the entrepreneurs, when they actually speak in front of the crowd, they feel that they're imposters. Have you ever gone through this phase as an entrepreneur and a speaker?
Well, I've gone through that in life. I think, again, the whole thing, as I say, most of our life, and I take a little broad brush on this at this point, but when we're young, we're kids, our parents are telling us how we're supposed to be. And we all learn, I think there's some point in our life that we're going to say or do something, and we look at our mom and dad and say, well, what would they say or do if I said or did that? And based on what our parents would react becomes our actions. And what happens at that point, we're living our life to make the authorities in our life at that point, our parents, happy. We go to school, we're told what seat to sit in at what time, we're told, what to study by other people, and we learn how to make the teachers happy so that, in 16 years of school, nobody ever told me to stand up and say an original thought. All I did was study what other people figured out. And as long as I was a good student, which meant I showed up in time and I did my homework and I did, again, what the authorities said to do, I succeeded. Then you go to work and you have a boss and they want you to be a certain way. Through that process, we don't really have an opportunity to discover ourselves because we're always being what somebody else wants us to be. And when you start to become an entrepreneur, you are stepping out to be yourself. Now, I'll just tell you, with me, that happened less than it happened with a lot of people, but it still happened to me. And I think all of us question, well, who am I? And I'm trying to be the person that will say the group I'm with or the authorities I'm with. I'm trying to be the person I'm supposed to be. I'm not trying to be the person I am. And what happens when you stand up in front of a group of people and start speaking is, and I went through this quite a bit, I'd be giving a speech and I'd be going, oh, they don't like me. Maybe I should be this way. And I would start to change like I would in life if I was with a different person or a different group. And they don't like that. Maybe I should do this. And what happens is the audience actually becomes the author of your speech instead of you, because you're trying to do something that makes the audience happy and you don't know what it is. And through the process of that, the only way you can be a good speaker is if you know what you want to say and you understand who your audience is and you have an idea to get across from them, but you're the source and the author of those thoughts. And so to be that comes back around to this whole imposter syndrome people talk about, which is more of an identity crisis of really discovering who we are. And I don't want to make my answers too long here, but one of the reasons that this is my own analysis, a lot of people that are great speakers have gone through these horrific experiences in life. And, people in their speeches, and a lot of people, they try to find some horrific event and how horrible the event was. Let me share that. Well, the reason people that have had horrible things happen to them are great speakers is because the only way they got through that situation in life was they had to come to grips with who they were. That's the only way they got out of the mess they were in. And when they came to grips with who they were, they could then stand on the stage and tell the story, but they were just being themselves on the stage. It's not the fact that the horrible experience made them a great speaker. It's that the fact they discovered who they were and they were not being an imposter on stage. They were just being themselves, talking to the audience. And those are the most powerful speakers out there. And I want to make one more quick statement, and I'll get into the next question. To me, speaking is a muscle, and we have to exercise the muscle. And as we exercise it, we start to become able with that muscle. The same way if when we were kids, maybe we wanted to be good at sports and we went out and we ran, we couldn't run very far. But as we started to run, we started to get our endurance built up. We felt stronger. We felt more able. It's the same way it happens with speaking. You have to speak. If you want to be a speaker, you've got to speak. You've got to be up there doing it. And otherwise your muscle's weak, and it's just like trying to go out and run a 10K and you've been sitting on the couch eating ice cream for the last 10 years. You're not going to do too well.
Right. Yes, Lance, I totally agree. And I think one of the main things speakers find it difficult, especially, we're talking about entrepreneurs here, is to find that balance between who they are, the authenticity part of it. And once they find the authenticity in the message they're actually sending out, they will probably find themselves. So that'll be my next question. But before that, I'd like to welcome the audience who have joined us here today. We have Rais, Paddy, good evening. Rishabh, Mike, Sohail, Razia, Shabir, Tanse, Rick, Abin, Aisha, so many of them. Dr. Geneva, warm welcome. Good evening. Muazzam, Akash, Afsana, so many of you have joined. So thank you very much for joining. Ali and Jagdish, Cosmin, Carol, good evening to each and everyone. Thank you for joining. And so, Lance, coming back to you, what is that one thing that entrepreneurs can do, especially when they're speaking, when they're pitching or when they're talking, they're giving their presentations? How can they find the balance between who they are and what is expected out of them?
Yeah, I don't know if there's just one thing you can do. And the other thing I will just tell you is that when you're an entrepreneur, it's just like when you're a speaker. Not everybody likes your speeches. And we have, it's interesting, we hear this, a lot of speakers talk about this. You'll get, like, a lot of times in Toastmasters, you know, in the meetings, you'll get a little note from somebody, you know, and like 20 people say, oh, I loved it, it was great. And one person will give you a criticism and you just get collapsed by the one person. Or and I've had this where I've talked to 600 people in a room and somebody comes up and tells me that I pronounced a word wrong or something. And in the beginning, that used to just devastate me. Or they disagreed with my premise or my theory that I was discussing or something, and it would devastate me that somebody didn't agree with me. And one of the things I think as an entrepreneurs we have to do is we have to realize that when we're pitching our product either to investors to put money into us, or we're talking to potential customers, not everybody may see the vision that we see. And we have to allow those people not to see it. It has to be okay with us that not everybody likes us. And that in the speaking world, that was something that took me a while to really get my hands around, that that person has their own situation, their own conditions, their own considerations, maybe their own inadequacies, their own failures in life. And I'm trying to bring something out, and some of them are very well intended with their comments, and some of them are actually what I would consider not well intended with their comments. They want people to do worse. So back to your question, what's the one thing they can do? Here's what I focus on when I'm coaching people and speaking is how interested, and I think that's a very key word. There's a lot of different words I would try to describe your presentation, but this is what I really focus on with people. How interested are they in talking to the audience? Not how interesting are they trying to be to the audience? And that's a big difference. We've all seen someone who's trying to be interesting all the time. They're telling jokes and they're trying to be the center of attention. And we've all been with someone who was interested in us. They cared about what we thought. They wanted us to understand. And as a speaker, there was a shift I had where before I was just trying to be the person who was interesting on stage or interesting in a presentation. And as I started to shift around, I was really interested that the people got the message, that they understood the vision, that they understood how what I was communicating could be a benefit. And I was interested in their thoughts. I was interested in their reactions. And I think one of the big things we can do is really focus on our interest in sharing our vision with the people versus our trying to be interesting to those people, and in some way they're going to want to be involved with us. And this, just to take that to the next level, the best way to be interesting to people is to be interested in them.
Wow. The best way to be interested in people is to be interested?
No, the best way to be interesting, okay, which is interesting, like if something's interesting, it grabs your attention. And a lot of people, when they're trying to do presentations, they're trying to be funny, or we talk about the imposter syndrome. They're trying to be the authority, and I'm going to tell you what's the problem, and they're up there versus really interested, where their attention's on the audience. They're interested in getting to the audience, that the audience gets their message. And I would just say this for those of us in life that have gone on a date at some point. If you've ever been out with someone who is interesting and they're all like, oh, well, that's fast. Oh, they're just going all the time. And you're going, do they even know I'm sitting here at the table, or, something? Or you're talking to someone and they go, well, what do you do? That's fascinating. What type of, they're interested in what you do. Those are the people we find interesting, the people that are interested in us. And when you're speaking or you're pitching your product, if you're really interested in your audience or you're interested in your customer or you're interested in your investors, they will find you interesting, which is what a lot of people want. And they try to be interesting by being interesting. I'll just repeat that. The way to be interesting to someone is to be interested in them.
Well said. A lot of interesting words there, and I'm sure we are being lot more interesting today as well, because that's why we have this crowd, and to tell everyone that we are interested in you. And thank you for coming today, and warm welcome to again everyone who have joined us this evening. Jasir, Prasita, Zarar. Good evening. Abdul, Sharito, Carol, Padre. A very good evening. Now let's just go into the presentation part of it, because that's the whole topic that we're discussing today. Lance, there are many entrepreneurs who have stage fright. In spite of them being very successful, they still feel very scared to go on stage and say something and speak to the audience. So what is that one advice that you would give to the entrepreneurs who struggle with stage fright or nervousness when presenting?
Well, I'd mentioned this earlier, and that was something I had issues with. And I'm just going to come back to speaking's a muscle. Look at it as a muscle. And if you haven't used that muscle and you try to, the muscle's going to be weak. So what you have to do is you have to exercise the muscle. And really all stage fright is a lack of presentation, a lack of speaking. Now, to use an analogy, I don't play a lot of golf, but I have some charity tournaments I play in with some friends of mine where we play a foursome maybe 2 or 3 times a year. And so I'm going to compare golf to stage fright. And what I do when I'm going to go play a golf tournament, because I don't play golf very much, is I'll go out 2 or 3 days before to the driving range and I'll hit some golf balls so that I at least get my swing down a little bit and stuff, so I can play a little bit better when I'm on the course with my friends. So what I recommend if you have stage fright is you need to really practice and drill your speech. And there's a whole process of practicing and drilling your speech that I go through, but you need to do that until you're confident in what you're going to say. And one of the things, I'll just give you this tip on practicing and drilling it. You need to practice and drill your speech like you're going to give it, because you will give your speech like you practice it. And if you practice your speech in the shower, you don't give your speech in the shower. So that doesn't work. You actually need to get in front of a room and practice, or in a room or in a large area, and practice it out loud and go through it until you feel comfortable and confident with it. And so when you don't speak a lot, just like I don't play golf a lot, I have to put more effort into every tournament I play in because I don't play very often. If I'm playing all the time, then I can just go play golf. Same way, if I'm speaking all the time, I can just get up and speak. But my speaking muscles are today very strong, so I don't have to practice and rehearse that much. But I will just tell you, stage fright is simply a matter of not having spoken enough. That is really, that it goes away once you've spoken enough. And, it's that simple. And to that, I'm going to give you a couple other examples. Let's just say somebody hadn't been on a date in a long time. And it's funny, my grandmother died. I lived with my grandfather for about 3 years, and I was in my early 20s. And my grandmother had died, and there was a friend of his coming into town, and they were going to go out to dinner. And it was a lady that had been a friend of the family for a long time. And I think he liked her, but he was so nervous going out to dinner. Here was a guy who was like 82 years old. He was so nervous. He was going to go out to dinner with her, and he hadn't been on a date in a long time. So he was really nervous. Or you take somebody who hasn't flown on an airplane in a long time, and they're scared to death that they can get on. And what if the plane crashes? And I don't know how to get through security. They're just a bundle of nerves getting on the airplane because their riding on an airplane muscles are weak. Well, the same thing's true with speaking. If you haven't spoken, you're like, oh, what happens to my thinking? What if they don't like me? And all these things are going through your head. You've got to basically do it enough so that you're comfortable with it. And, back to if you're going out on a date every weekend and you went out with somebody new on the weekend, great. It's just another date. If you fly 4 or 5 times a month and you go to another, it's just another ride on an airplane. But if you haven't done it in a while, you're going to be nervous. The same thing's true with speaking. And Droidika, the way I'm going to come back, the solution to that is to go out and do it until you strengthen that muscle a little bit.
Well, I think that's applicable to everything, isn't it, Lance? Just having a degree, even your qualification, I mean, you have to keep practicing, putting that into practice. You get better at that. And public speaking is a classic example for practicing or sharpening your saw. And it's very important to sharpen your saw from time to time when you're already speaking. And that's what they teach us in the world of public speaking, isn't it?
Yes, and to what we've discussed a little bit earlier is that when we stand in front of the audience, there's something I call the eyeball ratio. There's 2 eyeballs on our side of the equation, and there's maybe 200 eyeballs on the other side of the equation. And it has a tendency to put us under a magnifying glass because all these people are looking at us. And it can be very interiorizing, and it can be very unsettling if we are not confident in our own skin, which brings me back to one of the earliest things I said is the hardest thing to do in public speaking is to just be yourself and talk to the audience. And in order to be yourself, you have to know who yourself is, right? You can't, it's like you've been through enough in life that you're confident to stand up. And when all those people look at you, you don't get that lump in your throat and your heart quickens and you can't breathe anymore on it. Now, as I'm going through this, let me just tell you a couple things I used to do a lot when I would go do a presentation to another group, I think help with stage fright. One of them is don't sit down in the room like and the whole time, if you're going to go up and speak, I would go stand in the back of the room and look at the audience, and I would get my space out in the corners, and if you're sitting, your space is very small. And I'm talking about sort of our spiritual or emotional space, But so I would go stand in the back of the room. I would walk around and I would watch the other speakers from the back so that I could see so that I felt I was up. The other thing is get there early and meet people and talk to them so you know people in the audience. That's another thing I would do so that it's not like I just came in, I don't know anybody. No, I actually got to the meeting room early. There's so many things that you can avoid problems with if you get to your speaking venues early. And you're comfortable. If there's a problem with the computer setup or the microphone setup or the stage setup is not what you thought it was going to be, that happens all the time. And so it can throw you off and you can adjust on how you need to do your presentations. And here's another little tip I have is when you're being introduced, be standing up at the side of the room. Don't be sitting down. Because when you're sitting down, your blood pressure, your heart, and everything is in a different mode than when you stand up. And again, our personal space is very small when we sit down. So before I'm speaking, I'm always up over to the side of the room, looking out at the audience already, so that I already have that confront on the audience. And when I get introduced, I can walk onto the platform and the stage or walk up to the lectern. And I'm already on my feet. So when I stand up, I don't all of a sudden have a little bit of a lightheadedness or my pulse quickens just because I stood up. I need to have all that energy and all those physiological components of my body working so that when I walk on stage, my energy's up, my attention's out, and I'm already looking at confronting the audience. So those are a couple other little tips that I do very frequently when I speak and that I coach other people on as far as stage fright goes.
That's really effective. Standing when you're being introduced and getting there early and talking to people, I think those are those important aspects of getting comfortable with your surrounding as well. Thank you for that, Lance. They're simple, but I think we just oversee these things. Now, Lance, could you share some key elements that make a presentation impactful and memorable, especially for entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. One of them is, and we want to come back to something I said, is the speaker genuinely interested in the audience? Or is the speaker trying to be an entertainer up there and, get everybody laughing and stuff? Are they effective at communicating to the audience that they care about the audience? I guess that's the simplest point I've seen. And I have not only have I given several thousand speeches, but I've also witnessed several thousand speeches with that. The other thing is, there's something that I call in speaking, we have the mechanics of speaking, and that's our opening, our body, our conclusion to our speech. It's our vocal variety. It's the gestures we use. It's, all the mechanical, the stage movement, walking back and forth. It's all those things that we have. But what determines the mechanics of our speaking is, what's our message? Do we have a clear message in mind that we want the audience to get at the end of the speech? And there have been people that have come up to me and said, Lance, can you help me write a speech? And I said, sure. What message do you have? And they take 10 minutes to tell me their message. And I know if they take 10 minutes to tell me their message, they don't know what their message is. It's a little bit like trying to plan a vacation, but you don't know where you want to go. You can't plan the vacation until you want to know what your destination is. So your message is the destination you want the audience to land at. And I give the mechanics about 20% of the power of the speech. I give the message, a clear message, about 30% of the power and the effectiveness of the speech. This is a crystal clear message. And one of the things that happens with a lot of speakers is that they will put 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 messages in their speech. And it winds up confusing the audience because there's not a clear destination they're driving to. Doesn't mean you can't have supporting points behind your message, but there needs to be one clear message you actually want to get across. But here's when what you ask is, what makes, how can you make sure you connect? There's a thing I call our life force, or our life energy. And this consists, to me, of our conviction in our message. Okay. And I can do a deep dive. Let me just tell you, our passion for our message, those are the emotional components, but we can speak to an audience with a lot of conviction and passion and knock the audience's head off. The other thing I look at in our life energy is not only conviction and passion, but sincerity. Are we sincere in our message, and are we sincerely trying to help the audience? And the other thing, are we humble in our delivery, or are we arrogant in our delivery, which would be the opposite of being humble? And I said, I don't want to spend, I teach a lot of this, and I spend a lot of time on this whole thing, but the simplicity is, let's say we're watching our favorite sports team and they score a goal. Man, we come alive and we jump up and shout and yell and say, yeah, or they win the game. That's our life energy. And that's not just something that some hormonal shifts and some neurosynapses snapped in our mind. That's our emotional life energy. And you can call that whatever you want, either spiritual or emotional or however you want to do it. But that's not a physical energy. That's actually the energy that we as human beings possess. And we have to have conviction and passion for our subject matter. And we have to believe in what we're saying. And we have to bring that energy to the stage. And one of the worst things that you can do as a speaker is to go on the stage and have what I call is a low energy presentation, that you are trying to deliver the words to the audience versus deliver the message to the audience. The words are the carrier of the message. It's not about reading a speech or memorizing certain words and saying them in a certain order. It's about believing in what you're saying and having a sincere desire that the audience understands the importance of it. And when you have people that stand up, that believe in what they say, and there's a conviction and there's a passion for what they're doing, that's magnetic to the audience. But in order to do that, there's a little process you got to go through to really clarify those things in your mind. So that's one of the points. My life force message mechanic formula that I used, and that's what I finally discovered when I won the world championship, that I discovered in myself. When I found messages that I was passionate, I really believed, I had conviction for them, I could stand on the audience and I could communicate without hesitation and without reservation to the audience. If I wasn't sure of the message, I would withhold my energy from the audience because I was afraid somebody in the audience would go, that's wrong, he's a liar, because I hadn't really examined the messages. It was something I was trying to put across. So I made sure I really believed in what I was saying. And a couple other things I want to just hit on. There's something I see in speeches a lot, and it's what I call added and applicable information. Here's what, there's a lot of things that inspire us. There's a lot of numbers out there that that we may want to share with the audience. The audience never knows what we didn't tell them. And that's one of the things in my coaching that people go, wow. I go, no, there's all these things that can inspire us. And there's all this data. Like if we're an entrepreneur giving a pitch, there's all this data we can have on why this is so important. But if I try to give the audience all that data, I'm going to put them to sleep. So I need to boil that down to like one point. This is how the problem gets solved or something like that, where I keep it really clear and simple for the audience and take out all the complexity, take out all the added inapplicable components in your speech. And one of the things I've learned to do is to go through a speech, I will pull out things in a speech. I do this with coaching all the time. I'll pull out whole paragraphs and phrases, and it doesn't change the message of the speech at all. So I will go through a speech and say, what can I pull out and still maintain the integrity of that message? And all that stuff I pulled out wasn't needed. And I see people, they'll have a speech that's 20 minutes long, and I'll get it down to 7 minutes, and it'll be a 10 times better speech because it's clear, concise, and gets to the point. And you didn't take 10,000 words to say what you could say in 2,000. So those are some of the points. And Jyotika, there's a ton of stuff we can go over depending on what the individual's looking at, but those are some of the key points that I look at in speaking. Do you believe the message? Do you believe the message, and are you keeping it clear and simple for the audience? Are you bogging them down in so much data that they can't think through it? Let them come ask you a question after the speech if they want more background information.
Right. That's very important. Conviction. I think if you don't believe in your message, how do you expect the others to believe in the message? So what Lance, we just heard from Lance that clarity, conviction, and passion is very important. For those of you who have just joined us, Lance Miller is the 2005 Toastmasters World Champion of Public Speaking. And those of you who want to see his speech, please, you can find it on Google, and it's called as The Ultimate Question. Am I right?
You are correct.
Right. The ultimate question, where he has a beautiful message that he brings out. And that got him the world champion of public speaking in 2005. He's also an entrepreneur. And today we are discussing with him how entrepreneurs can come out or deliver excellent or impactful presentations. And that's what we're talking about. So I have another question for you, Lance. Actually, I have a lot of questions, but few that I'll try to ask you before I open the floor for the others, for our audience, is that how can entrepreneurs, I mean, you've told us what makes it interesting or believable, but how can entrepreneurs effectively structure their presentations to engage and captivate their audience? Are there any takeaways that you can give them?
Well, I think a couple things. That's such a broad brush to ask. It depends on the presentation. There's three things I always want to know when I give a talk. What's the venue? Am I in a boardroom? Am I, at a lectern at a head table? Or am I on a stage? Do I have a lapel mic? Those types of things. Okay, what's the venue? But to the point you're asking, how do you structure the speech to make it impactful? What's my message is the next thing I need to know. And the third thing is, who's my audience? And based on the audience and based on the message, I need to structure that speech to connect with that audience. And it's very simple. If I'm talking to, let's say, a group of prospective customers, my structure is going to be a little different than if I'm speaking to a group of prospective investors. It's going to be a little different than if I'm speaking to, let's say, an employment group and I'm looking for people to join my organization. I want to find people. That's going to be a different presentation each time. But I'm going to come back to the clarity. And here's something that I think, Jyotika, that was one of the things that probably we'd sit down in a coaching session and go through. But let me give you a little 3 points I think it's 4 points actually, that I think would help the audience today. One is, what problem do I solve? Because whatever we're doing in a business, we're solving the problem. Okay, that's really, we're helping somebody in some way, and there's a problem associated with it. So answer this question: what problem am I solving? The second one is, who has that problem? So if I'm doing a presentation, I'm going, well, what problem do I solve? Who has that problem? The third one is, where do I find those people? That's your marketing program, basically. Okay. And the fourth one is, how do I monetize solving the problem for them? And that's a formula that we use in public speaking in putting our speaking businesses together. Because a lot of people, they want to go out and they want to be an inspirational speaker or a motivational speaker. And I go, well, whenever you speak, you better be inspirational, motivational, no matter what you talk about. But people hire speakers that solve problems. They hire experts. So what problem do you solve? Who's got the problem? Where do you find them? And how do you monetize it? Those are the four questions. And I think if you look at your presentations that way, that would help give you some clarity in doing the presentation. And then the other thing is, and this is another thing that a lot of us in the coaching business with speakers or otherwise, people, you don't know what you don't know. And so you think you put a great presentation together, and then you have somebody look at it who is a professional in the area, and they go, ooh, ouch, this doesn't work. You need data here. You got these points out of sequence. This slide has way too many words on it, and that doesn't communicate. You need to have a fresh set of eyes look at your presentation so that you can actually see that it comes together, it comes together well. And I actually want to mention this before we move off on the communication with entrepreneurs. One of the biggest areas that I use my communication is with my team. And as a leader or an executive in a startup, there can be stresses in a startup that aren't in other organizations, and there can be unknown situations that hit you that you're not prepared for, and there are all sorts of setbacks and losses that happen. And your ability to communicate with your team and keep the team's morale high and keep people winning on their job, and you do that by caring about them, by having a common goal, you talk about the elephants in the room, you don't ignore them, you keep the toxic people out of the environment, and that all deals with communication. And everybody has good days and bad days, and we got to help the people having the bad days turn them into good days, and you do that with communication. And so a really big part of a lot of the communication I do is in the communication with my partners and my team when I'm turning a business around, and getting people to have a little twinkle in their eye and a little spring in their step when they come to work, and a smile on their face that they're excited to be here, and they're going to do something. They're going to do something great. It's not just a job; it's an adventure type of activity. And a lot of your communication, you have presentation skills, but I just want to touch on a lot of your communication is interpersonal communication with your team and keeping people winning in life. So,
right. That's yes, keeping people winning in life. That's very important. And interpersonal skills, that's where it begins, right? When you communicate
right.
well with your team, you are able to communicate well with the external audience. So we have Martin here. Kabir, can I request you to pull up Martin? I'm so sorry, Martin. You've been there for a while. I think you've raised your hand. Kabir?
No, he has not raised. He had raised, but he's not
He has
raising.
raised, I can see him raising his hand here.
So then that's
I think, okay, LinkedIn has, Martin, can you try exiting and entering again? Because Kabir cannot see you. Yeah. Right. Is there anyone from the audience who would like to ask Lance a question? Please raise your hand so we can pull you up. Right. We have Orit, Mike, Eskin, Razia. Yes. Warm welcome, Mike. Orit, warm welcome. Right. We can probably start with Mike, who came in. Mike?
Hi, Lance.
Hi,
Good evening,
Mike.
Lance.
Yes. Please
Good
go
evening,
ahead,
Mike.
Mike.
Yeah, hi, Lance. Sorry, Lance. I understand that you're from United States as well, but some of the speakers, some of the audience here is not from, their mother tongue is not English. So obviously when they speak, right, they need to, yeah, they need to prepare ahead, right? So I just want to understand from you, do we really need to think in English for the preparation, or can we use our mother tongue to think?
Well, I speak two languages. I speak English as a second language. So I always think in English, and I'm probably not the best person to ask that, but I would just say in my years of life and experience and talking to people, there are people that tell me they, and I think most people when they learn a second language, and when I was in school, I learned Spanish, but I would usually think in English and then translate it into Spanish because I hadn't mastered Spanish. I'm going to assume when you really master another language, you can think in the language. But I would also just say you have to do what works, and you have to do what works for you. And if thinking in the language works for you, then do that. If thinking in English and then or thinking in English works for you, do that. If thinking in your native language and translating it works for you, do that. The other thing is, I would just come back to the whole preparation and rehearsal aspect on it. If you're giving a presentation, you do it well enough. I think you start to think in the native language that or thinking you can start to think in the English language if you're speaking, if that's not your native tongue. You know, if you rehearse it enough, you'll know what words are coming out to you and start thinking it that way. So,
Right. Mike, does it answer your question? Okay, let's move on to the next speaker, Orit. Orit, I hope you can hear me. Orit, are you there?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello,
Please go ahead and ask
everyone.
your question. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this insightful, meaningful information. I truly appreciate it. And my question is, if I understand it right, mastering public speaking is something that requires a few skills from different fields. So, in order to get a deeper understanding of this, can you please list these and give us maybe a brief explanation? Thank you.
well, or that we're dealing with communicating to human beings is what we're dealing with, and instead of communicating to one, we're going to deal to communicate to more than one. So, as I said earlier, public speaking is like a muscle to me. You got to exercise it. You have to get used to standing in front of an audience, and you have to work on your thought process so that you can stand in front of the audience and not have your thoughts clog up in your mind and get all confused. And the only way I found to do that is to get up and do it. And that's why I've been a member of Toastmasters for, I think it's 31 years now, because to me, Toastmasters is like going to the gym every day or every week. I get to go work on my communication skills. And it's a safe place to mess up, and it's a safe place to make mistakes, and nobody fires me from Toastmasters. But through the process of that, we have to figure out what we're going to say. And that means we have to assess our values, and we have to assess what we believe in. We have to assess our convictions in life, and we have a project we're working on. We have to figure out what are the proper steps in that project that we need to communicate to get the people to get the project done. So there's a lot of components that, just as there are in life, when we're going to communicate to our kids or our spouse or our family, there's a lot of components that go into it. But you come down to the basics of the communication. Are you able to organize your thoughts in a way and communicate them in a way that the other person can receive and understand what we're saying? The definition of communication is what is understood on the other end. If it does not understood and is not duplicated by the person that we said it to, it didn't communicate. Communication is only what got received. And so those are the things we need to work on, is making sure that our messages can be received, and not that we put something together that's so brilliant that nobody can understand it. And that's what I feel quite honestly with a lot of our scientists and politicians. They are so brilliant that none of us common folk can understand what they're saying. And actually, to me, it's a sign of when somebody does that, it's a sign of being disconnected from the world rather than being connected to it, but we won't go down that rabbit hole. So, and I hope that gives you some points on it, but
Right. Okay.
there's a lot that goes into our speaking.
Right. Hope it answers your question, Orit, and gives you some takeaways. Let's move on. We have quite a few questions here. We have enthusiastic members from the audience who want to ask questions. We have just 10 minutes. So I request everyone to limit your question to 30 seconds so Lance can quickly finish answering your question. So Paddy next. Paddy, hi. Nice to see you here.
Hi, thank you very much. I only have a comment, so perhaps you might want to go to those people who have questions first, and if there's time, I could make my comment. It's just so nice to see Lance Miller and hear him again, but perhaps you should go to the people with questions first.
All right, let's go to Angelica. Hi, Angelica.
Hi, how are you doing? Thanks so
Hi.
much for bringing
Fine,
me up.
Angelica. Please go ahead. Please go.
Thank you. Yes, I wondered, Lance, thank you so much for coming up here, and thanks, Kabir, for bringing me up as well. My question is, when do you introduce a story into your presentation? Because I know stories make it interesting. So how do you usually start your stories, and when do you usually introduce them?
Okay, well, there's a real simple, let's say, formula or something in speaking is tell a story, make a point. And it also works the other way, depending on how you can make a point and tell a story. But from my standpoint, the story gets the audience emotionally involved in the point. And it's a little bit like when you tell a joke, you don't just give them the punchline. You have to set the joke up so the punchline has impact on the audience. And so you can tell, every point you make, you can tell a story on, and then you have to know how to tell a story. And I've seen some incredibly complicated, very detailed seminars on storytelling and all this. Basically, and this is what I learned on my own, and then I heard it, and I go, that's what I did. There's basically 3 acts in a story. And the first act is when was it, where was it, who's there, and what's the conflict. So whenever I tell a story, it was like when I was in high school or the first job I had when I was 23, I'd let them know when it was, where it was, who was there, what's the conflict, because every story's got a conflict in it. The second act is failed attempts to resolve the conflict. Whatever it was, my job, I want to get this promotion, I want to get out of the mailroom, and I tried this, I tried that. None of these things were successful. And the third act is the resolution of the conflict by the hero. And the hero should never be you, because it's sort of like saying, well, let me tell you how smart I was. I always make the hero somebody else. Like, I went home, I was talking to my grandfather, and he said, well, just do this. And he gives me this key to get out of the mailroom so I can get a promotion, as my story goes. I go back and I do that, and then that becomes the message of my speech. But I think it's very important, especially in a lot of speaking, is don't get into long-winded stories. Keep your stories pretty short and concise, so that so that you can move through your speech. But I'm going to repeat this. We learn best by experience. And let's just look at how we learned to ride a bicycle. We learned to ride a bike by getting on the bike and riding it. We didn't learn to ride a bike by reading a book or having somebody lecture to us how to ride the bike. We had to get on the bike and ride it and to get the experience of riding it. When we're speaking, it's hard to give the audience the experience of the message, but a good story will get them emotionally connected to the point you're making, so they get to experience that point in some small manner, and they will remember the story. And because they remember the story, they will remember the point. I'll just leave it at that. So I can talk for a long time on that. I'm trying to keep my answers a little shorter.
Yes, Angelica, does that answer your question?
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Lance. You kept it short and to the point. So
thank you.
All right. Thank you, Angelica. Let's move on to Martin now. Martin, I know you've been waiting for a long time. There was some technical glitch because of which Kabir could not notice you. Martin, please go ahead.
Hello, I'm Martin from Norway, and I'm speaking at this event in Dubai in November. and I'm speaking to a lot of people that are higher educated than me. I only have a bachelor. And I'm speaking to ENTs and PhDs, you know. So, I want to make my audience the heroes of the story. So, but I also want to make the heroes the ones who kind of adapts my idea, you know. Is that a good idea, or what do you think about that, Lance?
Well, first of all, I don't know what your topic is. I don't know who the audience is, but let me just answer that very quickly. And I will tell you a story that there's a very well-known U.S. speaker named Jim Cathcart, who's a good friend of mine. And Jim was talking about, he was speaking to a group of very highly educated medical professionals who had PhDs and beyond him. And he said, he went through, he said how honored he was to speak to the group and how educated they were. And he hasn't had that much schooling and stuff like that. But he said, how many of you had any lessons in leadership? And none of the hands went up. And he said, when it comes to leadership, that's where I'm a doctor, or that's where I'm a PhD. And he really set himself up. If you're going to speak to the audience, just because they have PhDs or master's degrees and you have a bachelor's degree, it really is based on what message do you have and what are you an expert in your message, or is your message still something of value that you feel these people can use, but you have to own your message completely. You can't come in and this isn't a speaking in praise. Let me tell you how wonderful all you people are, because of what you're doing. And again, I would have to know what your message is, but I would say you have to own your message and you have to be someone worthy of delivering that message to that audience. And that's something you probably are. You just have to make sure that you are in your own mind when you stand in front of them. But that's about all I can, without doing a 2-hour session with you, that's about as deep as I can get on that one.
Martin?
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. My speech is about a new audiometry, actually. So we test hearing about the same way today as in the birth of audiology in the years after World War II. So that's, and I've been working on this since 2006, so that gives me some ponders, I guess.
Well, if you have a new technology, that's fantastic. You have developed a new technology and you can share with them your new technology, but you're the expert in the new technology, and that's the viewpoint you need to take. We've been doing the testing hearing for the same way for the last 65 years or something, or 70 years at this point. And I have a new way of testing it, and here's how it's going to help you. So I think that's a great position. So,
right. All the best, Martin, for your talk. Let's move on to Razia. Hi, Razia. Nice to see you here. Razia.
Hi, Jyotika.
Hi. Go ahead with your question, Razia.
Yeah, thank you for bringing Lance at the very right time. Lance, hello. I'm a Toastmaster, and since the contest season is coming, I want your secret formula on how to start and prepare a winning speech like the one you did brilliantly in 2005.
well, Razi, if I tell you the secret, it won't be a secret anymore. So here's the simplicity. There is no secret. Okay, what it is, it's actually, from my standpoint, I think it needs to be your story. It needs to be authentic. It needs to be something that you genuinely, more than winning the contest, you want to touch the heart and change the mind of the audience. And I lost speech contests for 12 years. I lost speech contests about every way I can lose them because I was trying to be tricky and I was trying to manipulate the audience. And as I learned how to connect with an audience, it really, in 2005, when I stood on the stage, I'll just tell you, I was the 8th speaker and I'm all mic'd up. I'm watching the 7th speaker and I just went, Lance, you might walk out there and win this contest and that'd be cool. You might walk out there and lose this contest and that'd be cool. You're going to learn something about yourself you never learned before. This is your 5 to 7 minutes to speak to that audience, touch their heart and change their mind. And that was all I was focusing on. I had a message I really believed in, and I wanted to deliver it to the audience. And I just focused on that. And that's really, really focus on your message and the impact on the audience, and I think the chips will fall where they need to fall.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much.
All the best. All the best, Razia, for your
Thank you.
winning speech. Let's move on to Zarar. Zarar, are you there?
Thank you. My question
Go
is,
ahead, Zarar.
yeah, thank you. My question is, does normalizing God that is not contained in senses and eyes cannot see, never fits in brain, but somehow every heart felt it? And if we start conversation with that approach, does that really help getting over with stage frightening or any public speaking? Thank
Wait,
you.
I didn't understand the question.
Okay. My question is, sir, does normalizing God in the conversation, like if we start any conversation with the name of the God or anything like that, with that approach, that God that cannot be contained in senses and eyes cannot see, never fits in brain, does that really help people to get over with public speaking or stage frightening?
I don't. I've never seen that, and I would say one of the issues that we have just in the world today, there might be something that works for you in that component. I don't thoroughly understand what you're saying, but what I would say is if you're actually, whenever you bring religion or politics into a speech, you have a tendency to alienate more of the audience than you're going to connect with. But there may be, at the same token, I have a very spiritual side to me but I don't throw that out to the audience. Because those are very personal things. If there's something you can do spiritually or something you can do that way that gives you confidence and helps your stage fright, I would say do that. But in my experience, stage fright speaking is a skill and it is a muscle, and you need to exercise it and use it. And it's a little bit like saying, I want to be a great football player, but I'm going to pray to God and he'll make me a good football player. No, you need to get out on the practice field and kick footballs. That's what you need to do.
Yeah. So you're a spiritual person by yourself. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Let's move on to now. Please excuse me if I'm missing the series of people I'm going to call now. So I actually lost track by this time. Thurman is the next person. Thurman, are you there?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. Please.
All right, thank you. Yeah, appreciate you having me on stage, Lance. Let me tell you something. I could listen to this all day. As you're answering all the questions, I'm over here like fist pumping, super excited because of everything you're saying. So real quick, I joined Toastmasters 2 6 months ago, so I'm working my way through that. That's been great. My question is, if today you wanted to get a job as a corporate trainer, and you knew you had the technical experience, you could tell stories, you could hold a crowd, the steps, what steps would you take? Probably some high level steps that you would take to get your first corporate training gig, if you have experience with that.
That's fine. And that's a great question for giving 30 to 60 seconds to answer. But here's what I'd say. First of all, I would recommend, if you want to do that, getting into like the National Speakers Association, which is all about the business of speaking. It's not about the technical delivery. It's about the business of speaking.
National
and associating yourself with people who are doing that, and seeing what you can learn from them, because that's a very sharing organization. Most people are not holding their cards so tight to the chest that they'll share with you what's working. And there's a lot of business out there. The other thing is, look at working with a trade association. Look at some place you can go show your skills for free. Maybe do some training at your Chamber of Commerce, and hold some sessions where you can actually get some people in and they go, wow, that was really great. Or help there's like I said, a trade association, maybe they're having a conference and you're going to give a session on corporate training or public speaking or something like that. And what you do then, people see your skills. And so you need to find a way to show your skills without, so people can see that you can do what you do, so you need to get a spotlight on you. So I would look at some places you could go deliver stuff for free, like I said, a trade association or a Chamber of Commerce, some business organization.
That's perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
All the best, Thurman. Let's move on to, I don't know if it was Jasser or Erskine. Erskine, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. If you could please tell me how to pronounce that.
Yes, it's Erskine. The last E is silent.
Erskine. All right. Go ahead, Erskine, and then I'll move on to Jasir.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you, Lance, for this incredible meeting. You've been very resourceful. So, how important is it to meet people where they're at? So, for like me, I'm in financial services. So, either I'm presenting to people I'm looking to recruit, or I'm looking to do policies for. So, I asked, is it important to meet people where they're at, as far as from a client standpoint? Because some people, the lingo that you have in financial services goes over people's heads. So that's why I asked, what's your opinion on that? Thank you.
You're very welcome, man. I'll come back to one of the things I said earlier is communication is what is understood. It's not what you said that is not understood. And I would just say, without getting into a full-blown coaching session on it, you could probably create a very needed presentation for people, let's say, as far as clients, just explaining to them the terminology in the financial institution and educating them on that. And you become what I would call an influencer, or what I like an opinion, someone who leads the opinion in an area, because they go, boy, that guy helped me so much because I understand what an annuity is, and I understand what compound interest, how it works now. And those are very small examples, but no, you have to communicate to people at the level of where they are. You have to, and so you have to assess that. If you speak over their head, you're not going to communicate. The other thing is, if they're really knowledgeable and you treat them like they're a 6-year-old, you're not going to communicate to them. You have to hit people where they live, or it's not going to work. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Lance. Appreciate that.
Sure.
You're welcome. Let's move on to Jasir. Jasir, hi.
Hi, Jyotika.
Go ahead with your question, Jasir.
Right. I guess I'm the last one. So, are your tips on how to end a speech or presentation with some impact?
Well, the simplicity on ending a speech. First of all, there's only two things I recommend. There's a big difference between memorizing and knowing your speech, but I think you need to really know and memorize your opening, so when you walk out, you can say it. You know exactly what you're going to say. The other thing is, I think you need to know or memorize your close, your conclusion to your speech, because I've seen so many people, they get up there and they don't know how to end their speech, and they keep talking and talking and talking. But the simplicity is, I talked about having a message, and you want to be able to encapsulate what you just talked about into a simple concept that the audience can take home with them. And I said, when your conclusion of your speech, and without looking at your speech, it's very difficult to say, here's exactly how you do it. It's because this is live human communication. This isn't something that is stamped out in a forge that every piece that comes out of the factory is the same. So when you made, let's say, 3 points in your speech, your conclusion should summarize those points. And I say, put it in a little package with a red bow on it that you give to the audience to take home. And I'm just going to give you a quick example of that. There's the best storyteller I've ever heard is a man named Garrison Keillor, who was on National Public Radio for many years here in America. And he tells these stories about this little town in Minnesota called Lake Wobegon. And I went to see him speak one evening when he was here in California, and he told 7 stories of Lake Wobegon, and he got down, he had about 3 minutes left in his hour, and as a professional speaker, I'm going, oh my God, how's he going to finish? How's he going to conclude the speech? I said, he's got 7 different stories. There's not a line between any of them, and how he's got 3 minutes to conclude this. He can't say, thank you very much, those are my 7 stories. He's got to conclude it. And what he did, he finally looked, he goes, let's just remember that life is a gift, and every day is a gift, and treat every day in life as a gift. And I went, oh my gosh, he gave us 7 gifts of 7 days in Lake Wobegon, and he was able to tie those 7 completely different stories together with that. And here's the point. That was probably 15 years ago. I heard him. I still remember the conclusion to his speech. That's how good that conclusion was. So I hope that gives you a little insight, but without looking at your speech, it's hard for me to figure out what the conclusion will be.
Thank you
That's a
so much.
beautiful story. I hope it answers at least partly your question, Jasir.
Definitely, that's it.
Right. Lance,
Thank
you
you
just
so much.
mentioned that you were wondering how he would finish the speech. I'm pretty much going in the same lines now, thinking, because I've already overshot my time. But we can speak about this hours together, and I'm sure we'll have an audience full a house full of audience who will be eagerly waiting for you to speak again. But we have time constraints, so I will not be able to continue this more, but probably we can do it again some other time so we can speak more about how they can benefit from your knowledge, Lance. So
Well, thank
thank you very
you. Yeah. No, I just
thank yeah.
here's the one thing. I'll just leave you at this point is I will just from what I've experienced in my life is that as far as living, being alive and living in life, I'm as alive and living as I can communicate with the world. And if you look at let's say a like a homeless person or something, they're they can't even confront getting a job or whatever. They're not alive and living like they should be. And I don't want to get into the homeless crisis we have in America or anything like that. But the point, you look at someone who can't communicate, they're not engaged with life. They're not engaged with living. And to the degree that you can get your communication skills up and engage with more people, you will become more alive as a human being.
Well said, Lance. Communicate with people, and that's where you grow because you interact, you're able to give your message to them. So well said. Thank you very much, Lance, for spending about 1 hour 50 minutes with us. It is indeed my pleasure to reconnect with you or connect with you for the first time on this stage. So thank you, and thank you to our audience who have joined us today from different parts of the world to listen to our champion speaker, Lance. Thank you to the enthusiastic audience who came to the panel to get their questions answered. Hopefully, we'll be able to do this session again. Until then, like Lance mentioned, have clarity, conviction, and passion in your message. Mastering the art of impactful delivery is not just about what you say, but how you say it. By incorporating all the strategies or some of the strategies that Lance, our speaker today, has shared with you, I'm sure you'll be able to inspire, persuade, and leave a lasting impression on your audience. With that, I'd like to wish you all the very best in your journey of entrepreneurship and creating that impact with your audience and with your tribe. Wish you all the best and a very, very, very good evening or good day to all of you. And come back again, join again. We have another session coming up tomorrow at 6 p.m. Dubai time, 7:30 p.m. Indian time. We have 100 days and 100 events, but we've already done with 23 of them, and the remaining events are going to add a lot of value to you going forward. So wish you all the best, and it's bye from me now, for now. And Lance, would you like to say bye to all the audience? All right, Lance, you need to unmute yourself. All right, I'd like to say bye on behalf of Lance. Because, okay, you're there. All right, okay.
On the unmute button, I was moving. No, I thank you for everybody for taking time out and listening to me today. One of your biggest fears as a speaker is nobody showing up. But no, this was fun for me to share some of the knowledge I had, and I appreciate the questions and appreciate the interest. And Dortika, I'm always glad to come back and help wherever I can.
You will, Lance. Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you back. And I'm sure we're going to enjoy again because I've had a great time this evening and I look forward to interacting more with you. Thank you, Lance. And good night to all of you. But before that, let me hand over the stage back to Kabir so he gives his parting words. Over to you, Kabir.
Thank you, Jyotika. And thank you, Lance. Dreams. It was a dream to have you here, Lance. So that's how I tell. Dream big, aim high, start small. Dream very big. You'll be able to achieve it. Same words. So I'd like to thank Lance, Jyotika for taking this session with lots of power, and all the like LinkedIn friends, Angelica, Zarar, Orit, Martin, and team members Jasir and Thurman and Razia. So, as a part of 100 days event, you all know every morning, like Dubai time morning and your time evening, 5 a.m. to 6 a.m., we have a power morning and a fitness session completely for you to be healthy and fit. And that's it. With lots of dream this side, Kabir, telling again, dream big, aim high, start small. And I want to see all of you as the next unicorns. In the count of three, signing off, Kabir. Three, two, one.
Love
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.